Hi, students. My name is Jeannette Money. I am one of the members of the program team for Immigrants, Refugees, and Human Rights, the Quarter at Aggie Square program. I'm happy to welcome you all to this information session. I'm a professor in the political science department, and I was a central organizer of this Quarter at Aggie Square program. So today you're going to meet members of the team. One just came on the screen is Jeffrey Kahn. He's another member of the program team. Our third member is Mario Guerrero, and he will be able to join us around 12:30. And then the last one is Angela Taylor, who's the staff person supporting us, and she will also be able to join us a little bit later in the presentation. So what is Quarter at Aggie Square? Well, let me start with Aggie Square. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but Chancellor May has made a huge recommendation to link the UC Davis campus more closely with our medical center campus in Sacramento and bring the benefits of the university to the community in which the medical campus resides. And so this is a $1.1 billion project that's going to be rolled out over several years. They've gotten permission to go ahead to start with construction, I believe, so that should be starting relatively quickly. I believe it was held up because of the pandemic, but I think it's now moving forward. You can see that there's going to be 4 major buildings on the campus off of Stockton Boulevard in Sacramento, and it's going to be a hub for research, innovation, and education. And ultimately, there will be dorms on that campus for the students participating in Quarter at Aggie Square when they come to the Sacramento campus to spend a quarter learning about particular issues of public importance and working within the community on those issues. So we're a small part of this much larger project of Aggie Square. The Quarter at Aggie Square is a program that places you in Sacramento for your courses for the entire quarter. It lets you engage with Sacramento in a way that enhances your education with practical experience and community engagement. So it allows you to take the knowledge that you gain during the quarter in the classroom into an internship, into service learning opportunities, into research opportunities that allow you to connect what you learn in the classroom with the broader world and the community in which we live. One of the nice things I think about this program is that the enrollments are limited to 25 students. So this allows us to work together as a team. You'll get to know all of the students in the course and work closely with the 3 faculty members who are going to be teaching the courses. So as it says, spend a quarter with a small group of fellow students and dedicated faculty in a focused learning environment that includes classes and internship, research, or service learning. So it's a program that takes you off the Davis campus, at least for the times that you're involved in the classroom and in the internships. And as I said, ultimately, but probably not for this first cohort, students will actually be housed on the Med Center campus. You might wonder why we developed a program that focuses on immigrants and refugees. Well, you probably have noticed that that this is a public issue that has made the headlines in the United States recently, and that salience of the issue has been growing in the United States. And we're certainly not unique. It's the salience of immigration as an issue has grown in virtually every country around the globe because virtually every country is involved in immigration in some particular way or another. Either countries are receiving immigrants and refugees from elsewhere, or countries are sending immigrants and refugees elsewhere, or there's countries that are called transit countries, countries where migrants move across those countries in order to get to their chosen location. That said, California has a special role in the United States because we have the highest immigrant and refugee population in the entire United States. We host almost 11 million immigrants, and the immigrants is a broad term that includes both what we consider economic migrants, family reunion migrants, as well as refugees. So it's this broad term. That's about 27% of the state population. So that means more than 1 in 4 of us is an immigrant who's been born in another country. And what's more, that counts for 24% of the total immigrant population in the United States. So California has also now been designated as a sanctuary state. And for a significant period of time, Sacramento has served as one of the 9 major centers for hosting refugees in the United States Refugee Resettlement Program. So we also have, in general, a larger portion of the refugee population here in the state of California. So we're going to be studying about immigrants. We're going to be studying about refugees. And one of the issues that is central to the link to the Sacramento community is that immigrants can confront many challenges when they're trying to resettle in a country that's other than their own. And they confront these many challenges. And moreover, the communities that receive them also confront challenges because a new population is moving in. And so we want to focus on better understanding the ways in which these communities can interact so that immigrants can be fully incorporated into life here in the United States. Okay. So for the program, it's supposed to combine an expertise in international migration with hands-on experience working with immigrant and refugee communities to develop an understanding of the interaction between local communities and the migrants. Some of our goals for you as students would be to develop empathy for immigrants locally. So meet the immigrants, understand who they are, where they come from, what their life goals are. I see that I'm frozen for a bit, so we want you to develop empathy for the students locally, but also to understand that California is only one setting in which immigrants find themselves. And so we want to develop an empathy for immigrants globally, and perhaps for professional choices, work with migrant communities either in the United States or elsewhere to assure that they can thrive in their new homes. One of the ways that we're going to go about doing that is to learn about state and local policy processes that affect immigrant reception. So what are the laws and policies and resources that immigrants have in place in their new homes that either prevent or allow them to integrate more fully into the community? And also, we hope that you will learn how to practice advocacy skills to improve the outcomes for both the immigrants whom we want to welcome and the host community, which is hosting them. Okay, so here's our program team. So I'm on the left. I'm a professor in the political science department. Jeffrey Kahn is, you can see on the screen, is an assistant professor in anthropology. And the third member of our team is Mario Guerrero. He is the Deputy Director for Legislation at the California Department of Human Resources. I think we're very lucky to have him join the program and teach one of our courses because he's been involved in California state government for more than a decade, taking up roles in both non-governmental and governmental organizations. And he has a very deep knowledge of how California governance works. Moreover, he has a good network that will be maybe useful to some of the students who are interested in state and local government. And he has a good grasp of the legislative process and will be teaching students about drafting legislation. Okay. So what does this course consist of? So this is a quartered Aggie square. It's going to be offered for the first time in winter 2022. And it will be offered for 3 consecutive years. This is the 4th quarter at Aggie Square program. So there's been a gradual rollout of quarter at Aggie Square, but we're one of the initial programs. There's been 3 quarters of different programs offered, one last fall, one in the winter, and then one that's currently winding up right now. On different topics, and ours is on immigrants and refugees. It consists of 17 units of coursework, and we're going to talk in detail about that coursework. One course is on international migration. One course is on human rights and the refugees. One course is on California state politics. There's also going to be an internship or service learning course that will put you in the community or involved with community organizations. And that's for 3 units. And then there's an additional 2 units that we are going to use to facilitate the internship and service learning experience, as well as to host guest speakers from the community. Okay, so it's 17 units. That's a full quarter's worth of courses. Okay, so we're now going to launch into a description of the coursework so that you have some details about that and how these courses are connected to provide a larger framework from which to understand the immigrant experience in California, in Sacramento, in California, in the United States, and in countries around the globe. So I'm going to be teaching the course IRE 104, SOC 104. The IRE is the International Relations major, which is part of the Political Science Department, and then of course the Department of Sociology. So what I propose to do, so let me tell you a little bit about my background. So I've been working as a faculty member at the University of California for more than 25 years now. I'm a Californian. I grew up in Southern California, and I've attended public schools in California, including San Francisco State as my undergraduate degree, and UCLA is where I got my PhD. So I'm California born and bred. And I feel very privileged to be teaching in the University of California system. I think it's one of the most highly rated university systems in the world. And I'm very pleased that we have this opportunity to offer to California high school graduates. So my research agenda focuses centrally on international migration. I write on migration policy in receiving states of the global north. I write on migrant rights. I write on issues of international cooperation on migration. And I also write on issues and do research and write on issues of migrant access to citizenship. So I have a broad research agenda associated with immigration. What I propose to do in this course on international migration is to place our local context into the global context. So I'm interested in having you understand what's going on in Sacramento, but understand that that's only one place where immigrants move. And there's some many commonalities that we have with other communities that are receiving immigrants. So we want to place the local communities into the global perspective. Where are people moving around the globe? How many come to the United States versus European countries versus countries in the global South? More than half of our immigrants move among countries of the global South. So to place this in global perspective, I want to make sure that you're aware of the legislation that affects migrants in our community. So we'll be looking at US legislation on immigration, we'll look at California legislation on immigration, and we'll look at local legislation on immigration and resources that the community makes available to immigrants. So some of the big questions that immigration scholarship raises is, so what's the immigrant, what is the impact of immigrants on host societies? And we can think about the economic impact, we can think about the social impact, and we can think about the political dimensions. So how does a receiving society cope with an influx of immigrants? What are the advantages of having an immigrant community? What are the dislocations that might occur? How can we deal with those dislocations? And then, of course, we want to acknowledge that these are individuals that have had homes and they are coming here for particular purposes, a wide array of purposes, but their departure also generates an impact in their home countries. So what happens to their home countries when they leave? Is that good for their home countries? Is that bad for their home countries? How can we mitigate the disadvantages while enhancing the advantages? And finally, and importantly, we're going to focus on immigrant integration. How is it that they become we? That new arrivals become members of the communities they inhabit? What are the hurdles that they have to confront? How does the host community react to them? And what we can do to ease that process. So that's sort of the main themes that I would like to convey in the classroom on international migration, placing our local conditions into the global perspective. Okay, so I'm going to turn the time over to Professor Kahn, and he's going to introduce himself and talk about his course.
Thank you, Jeannette. You can call me Jeff. You don't have to call me Professor Kahn in front of the students. That's totally fine. And hi, Mario. We've never met before, but excited to hear about your course, and as I'm sure the students are as well. And I also am trained in law. So I'm bringing multiple perspectives to the table here. So I want to talk a bit about both of those aspects of my background, and then I'll go into the details related to the course itself. So I have a law degree. In law school, I focused primarily, well, I focused on many different topics, but as part of your legal education, you can take clinics, which are at the law school I went to, basically run almost as small public interest law firms. And so I participated in the clinics that work primarily on questions of immigrant and immigrant worker rights. So I've handled asylum claims, I've handled Convention Against Torture claims, I've argued motions in federal court and immigration related matters, sometimes related to policy, sometimes related to the detention of non-citizens. So I have a fair amount of practical experience that's related to immigration and immigration law, and also asylum law, which, as I'll talk about in a moment, is very much related to international refugee law. In addition to that, I'm an anthropologist, and my work in anthropology has focused primarily on immigration to the United States from Haiti, and looks at how a lot of the legal battles, the advocacy contests around how Haitian asylum seekers were treated in the 1970s and the 1980s and the 1990s really led to a dramatic reshaping of how the US polices its borders, and also how asylum seekers are dealt with, both in terms of the actual law of asylum, but also the policies around asylum seekers. So I have that background as well. I do ethnographic field work in Haiti, and I do ethnographic field work with Haitian communities in the United States as well. So for the course itself, I'm going to provide a rough outline here. These are the contours of the class. What it's actually going to look like is going to depend on how many of you are actually enrolled. So there might be activities that we do if it's a smaller class that we wouldn't do if it's a larger class. So some of these details are going to change. But one thing we're going to look at is the emergence of the international legal regime concerning refugees and asylees, and how that relates to what in the law we call domestic legal regimes. In Europe, they call it municipal legal regimes. Basically, the interaction between state law, that would be the domestic law, and the international legal regime. Right? So we're going to look at that history. Where does the definition of the refugee emerge? What are the debates around the treaty regimes that govern the treatment of refugees? How do those legal provisions get downloaded into domestic legal systems or not? And in thinking about that, we're also going to examine the challenges of enforcing the refugee rights regime, right? So there's a lot of really creative, in a kind of dark sense, legal and policy work that goes into evading the responsibility to protect refugees, right? So outsourcing border policing so that a given legal regime operative in a state, let's say Italy or the European Union, does not constrain the Italians in their efforts to keep sub-Saharan Africans out of the EU. Offshore maritime migration policing, right? That takes the asylum screening apparatus and puts it outside of domestic territory, so the same legal provisions don't apply. So we're going to look at a range of challenges that are that face advocates, lawyers who are seeking to enforce the rights of refugees. And then we're going to have some of the anthropological dimension as well. We're going to explore the experiences of those who are seeking refugee or asylee status, life in refugee camps abroad, the resettlement process, and we'll look at different case studies of resettlement. And then we're also going to have a kind of critical theoretical framing with regard to human rights law more generally. So a kind of critical thinking apparatus with which we can address, interpret, wrestle with, engage with these legal frameworks and these advocacy models.
Thank you, Jeff. It's nice. It sounds like a fascinating course. I think I'm going to sit in on it too. I'd next like to introduce you to Mario Guerrero, and he's going to come on screen and talk about his course that he's going to offer on California state politics. Whoops. There we go. Mario.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jeannette, for having me here. I'm going to introduce myself, give a little bit of my background, and then talk about the course. So first, I consider myself to be a generalist and advocate, and you'll see some of that in my background. One of my current job is I'm Deputy Director for Legislation at the California Human Resources Department. I'm also chair of the Sacramento Community Police Review Commission. It's an advisory body that gives recommendations to the mayor and council on police policies and programs. Background-wise, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a generalist. So I've worked for civil rights organizations like Equality California, the organization that's the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender civil rights organization here in California. I've worked for the NALEO Educational Fund, National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. It's a long name, Educational Fund, and their focus is on civic engagement. I've also worked for a number of labor unions, Service Employees International Union Local 1000, the state's largest union representing state employees, as well as the California Faculty Association. They're the union that represents faculty at the California State University level. Also worked briefly for the Assembly Committee on Accountability and Administrative Review. Why am I mentioning all of these things? It's because all of those things have an impact on how I teach my course. I am a practitioner, and every time I teach a course, I try to do a number of things, but at least two. One is ensure that students leave with a very clear understanding of how important government is and its impact to our daily lives. And I'm super excited about teaching this class, right? Because it's going to be, even though the focus is going to be California state politics, we're going to, as part of this program, of course, do some work and some focus around immigration, refugees, and human rights policy. So because I'm a practitioner, I'm excited about some of the exercises that the class will go through. Of course, we'll cover the basics, right? The structure of federal, state government with a particular focus on state government, right? Because we're going to talk about state and local immigration-related legislation. So we'll focus on the legislative process in particular. We'll talk about the role of politics in legislation making, having drafted quite a few pieces of legislation that have become law. I can tell you that very few people really get to see the background, all of the details on how a bill just was even initiated and the changes that were made. There's so many interest groups, so many conversations with the author's office, so many of those things that the public doesn't always see outside of the committee hearing. So I'm excited to kind of share that kind of experience, share a little bit more process. And we'll be doing that through a couple of different things that I'm excited about. We're going to try to draft legislation in my class. I'm so excited about that. I've never done with a class before. I'll probably share a few of the bills that I've drafted and the process, just to kind of give you examples. But we will be focusing again on immigration. There was a bill by Assemblymember Kalra, a current legislator, that drafted a bill that impacts not just the CSUs, but the UCs and community colleges in terms of immigration individuals coming on campus. And I worked on that bill in terms of drafting that with the author's office, as well as what happens when a student, for example, may be deported and they come back, whether they were deported through an accident because they had a legal right to be here, they were documented. So we'll talk about, as an example, that bill and its process and how it changed over time. So a lot of the exercises that we'll be doing in class will be about how students can really look at the process from a practitioner's point of view, as opposed to, the public just, signing on and listening to a hearing. It's more of, how do you draft the legislation? What are the interest groups? What are the barriers to getting what you need to do? What happens when you get part of what you want? Or what are the decision makings when an organization is sponsoring a bill and it's not everything they want? Do they move forward? Do they not? What are some of those considerations? So I will stop there. As you can tell, I'm really excited, especially about the exercises we'll be doing in class. I'll make myself available for questions as well, but I'll pass it back to Jeannette.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information. There's still some more information to cover, but I wanted to stop and at least sort of acknowledge that you're sitting out there and see if you have any questions up to this point. So we're still going to go into the service learning opportunities, and we're going to talk about the logistics. But at this point, do you have any questions? So you can just, you can go to the chat, and Angela is will help us with the chat, but you can also just unmute yourself and speak out, or you can raise your hand. Okay, so the next portion of the quarter of the quarter at Aggie Square is the internships and service learning. And so what we are planning on doing is having you work with local non-governmental organizations, internships that are either on-site or distance internships, depending on the organization that you work with, or that you would be involved in what is called service learning. And normally this is working with a group of students with an organization on a project that that is important to them and their organization. Alternatively, there's perhaps a possibility to work on drafting legislation and developing advocacy programs for organizations. So those are the types of things that we're going to be doing. We're still looking for possible partners. And the partners may include, so these are possible community partners, organizations like World Relief, Opening Doors, the International Rescue Committee. These are organizations that help with refugee resettlement. There's also some legally based organizations such as Amnesty, Sacramento Refugee and Immigration Support Activities, and the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund. There's service organizations for immigrants, such as the Sacramento Family Unity Education and Legal Network. And there's also ethnically based community organizations, such as the Sacramento Chinese Community Service Center, the Vietnamese American Community Service Center, and others. So these are the types of organizations that we're starting to negotiate with so that we can find service learning and internship opportunities for every student enrolled in the program. This is set up so that you will get 3 units of credit, and the amount of time that you would need to spend in this activity is, as a result, 9 hours a week. Okay. So, and then there's another final 2 units, that's reflections, guest speakers, Paul 198. It's an opportunity for us to meet members of the immigration advocacy community as guest speakers, to work to develop service learning projects, and also to reflect on community learning activities. So when we do go out in the community, how do we take our knowledge out there? And then how do we bring it back, and how does that change the way that we think about our work in the classroom as well as in the community? Okay, and here is the tentative schedule for the classrooms for the program. Again, winter quarter 2022. We have asked to reserve rooms on the UC Davis Medical Center campus. So that's where the classwork will be held. We're planning on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule for the coursework. There would be a course, the human rights course from 11 to 1, a break. The migration course from 2 to 4 and a break. And then from 5 to 8 on Tuesdays would be Mr. Guerrero's course on California politics. He works full-time during the day and so is going to have to join us in the evenings. And then on Thursdays, we would use that time to meet as a group in our reflections and guest speaker series. So any questions about the additional coursework and how we're going to organize that course? So the internship and service learning activities will be scheduled based on the organizations with whom you work on either Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. And so that you have the 2 days worth of classwork are concentrated so that you have the rest of the time both to do your classwork, but also to do your internship or service learning activities.
Professor Money, there is one question just around the main requirements and eligibility. So when you get to that.
Okay. Okay. So eligibility and requirements, we are moving on. So one of the things is transportation logistics. So most students either commute, but many of our students live directly in the Davis community. How do you get to Sacramento? You can ride a bike, but it's a pretty long ride. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that we have a transportation service called the Causeway Connection. It leaves every hour from the Sacramento campus to Davis and the reverse from Davis to Sacramento. And it comes free of charge. So this allows you to get from the Davis campus to the Sacramento campus. And our courses end prior to the last bus leaving to go back to Davis. So this is one way that, given that the dorms on the Aggie Square campus have not yet been constructed, this will allow you to easily move back and forth between Davis and Sacramento. Okay, so we're going to talk about the application process. So the application process is already open. There's a place where you can apply. It's down at the bottom, but it's on the Quarter at Aggie Square website. The enrollment is on a first come, first served basis for students in good standing. There's a maximum of 25 students to be enrolled. And the application deadline is in the fall. It's Monday, October 4th, 2021. However, I'm hoping and anticipating, because of the student body on our campus and the resources that we have available in terms of migration, that we will have 25 students who want to enroll. So I would recommend that if you're interested in the program, that you go ahead and enroll, because it is on a first come, first served basis. We will notify you of the acceptance into the program by October 15th. And I wanted to point out that that is prior to registration for winter quarter 2022. So you will know whether or not you're accepted into this program before you have to register for courses. I want to point out that there are no additional fees of any type to be enrolled in this program, and that it is for students with an interest in immigration and refugees. As long as you're in a good standing as a student, you are welcome to apply for the program.
Professor Money, are there any requirements in terms of prereqs of classes that students need to take, or class year that you're looking for?
So so most of the classes, I don't know about Professor Kahn's class, but the other classes there are recommended prerequisites, but there are no required prerequisites. So you can enroll directly in the IRE 104, SOC 104. You can enroll directly in the Paul 104. You can enroll directly in the Paul 198 and the Paul 192. So Professor Kahn, any prerequisites for your course?
I mean, I would not require other courses to enroll, but I will say that I do have to check how the human rights program set this course up. So I will check that because there is a small chance that when they submitted this in the system, and this is not something that the students are interested in, that there might be a prereq, which I have not checked. So I will look that up and see if there's anything listed.
Okay. So
But I'm not requiring anything.
Okay.
And if there's a way to waive it, I'll waive it.
Okay. So faculty generally do have the authority to waive requirements, and Professor Kahn has said he will waive the requirements. So students can enroll directly in all those courses then. Okay. So Angela Taylor is a staff person here at UC Davis that is providing all of the administrative support for Quarter at Aggie Square. And she's been helping with the rollout of this program. And I'm going to turn the time over to her so that you can understand her role as well.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today, especially on a Friday, on a warm Friday afternoon. Yeah, as mentioned, I support the faculty primarily in the ways of getting the courses set up and the recruitment efforts and outreach. I do support with that as well. So if there are questions about getting enrolled or just general questions about what the experience is like, I can answer those questions as well, because I actually have the benefit of seeing a bird's eye of all of the different cohorts and experiences that happen throughout the Quarter Aggie Square program. So we have the transformative justice studies that happened last fall. We have the multilingual education one that's happening this spring as we speak. And we also had advancing healthcare equity in the winter. So we've had a number of students who participated this year already, and the feedback that we're getting is very positive. In fact, because of the immersive experience and the small cohort nature of the program, and there's the subject matter and doing a deep dive on the subject matter in a very coordinated way, the students are saying that it's one of the best quarters they've ever had. So I will say that that is consistent across the cohorts. And I know this one will be definitely an experience that you don't want to miss.
Thank you, Angela.
Another question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, yeah. So the question also is, after you're accepted, what I do is I take all the students who have been accepted and I do a batch enrollment with the registrar's office. So there's no need for you to worry about doing it during your pastime. And then sometimes we get questions for students who may have taken one of the courses in the past in another quarter. So the way that it is in the Quarter Aggie Square program is that the program is really curated and the curriculum is curated in a different way than it would be in the normal offering of the course. So that's something else to note. So we have come up with ways where students can take the course again, but it would be possibly as for something like a 198, but still taking the course alongside the other students in the cohort. So it's just basically that you're getting units in a different course, but taking the course with everyone else is how we've done it so far.